This fall, the story of a grape who refuses to be crushed. One grape to rule them all, and one bottle to buy.
Whoa, honey, what are you doing?
I was recording an intro.
Okay, that's great, but we got a podcast to do.
Okay.
All right, well, this is We Know Texas Vino.
Back at it, you guys. Erica, thanks for driving me up here in that Camaro. That's beautiful.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Don't forget about me over here.
Oh, Will, you're back.
I'm
missed
back.
you last week, buddy. Welcome
Hey,
back.
I missed y'all too.
Yeah, good having Will back this week, and we're here with our friend. Well, we're going to introduce him in a minute because we have kind of a star.
No, wait a minute.
In
He
tow today.
doesn't need no introduction because he's that famous.
I'm blushing now.
Oh my, he is blushing. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we're excited to be back here for our next podcast.
Yeah, so I want to welcome everybody back to We Know Texas Vino. This is going to be episode 33. And
Wow.
we were just sitting here actually having a conversation about this. Now, we can't believe we've done this, and we're at 33 episodes.
Right.
But if you actually look on your podcasting app, it actually says we have, 36 apps, 37 apps?
37.
Yeah, so it's just amazing how far we've come along since January.
And I was telling your parents who are here today that I'm pretty excited about episode 50, which will happen this year. And we're excited for that because that's kind of an iconic number if you think about it. If you're going to do anything in life, you have to get to a certain plateau to say you're successful.
Yeah.
I think 50 is a heck of a number.
It is.
Of course, I thought 10 was a pretty good number after our start, of course, which was pretty fun. But listen, we're excited to be back here. And this is We Know Texas Vino. We're here sitting in. We've been blessed to be able to stay here at Square Cloud Winery. In fact, we have a podcast with those folks today.
Yeah.
But we're here with a really, really neat man, Michael Cook. I can already tell we're going to be best friends. And just his personality and just his disposition is so much fun. But Erica, real quick, thanks for running the board today. And I appreciate you doing that last week as well. Where can people reach us online?
Well, all the social media sites like Instagram and Facebook are awesome. And then we'll put together amazing website. We know Texas Vino .wine. So check us out.
.wine. Don't forget about that one.
All those podcasts are posted.
They're
all
website.
They're all posted. Yes.
I worked really hard on that.
It's a lot of work, man.
When we visit a
Almost
winery.
50 at the end of this year. It's incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And when we visit a winery, some of our great friends, one of our sponsors, Texas Wine Friends and Lovers website, and of course their app, they post the podcast on that site for the winery, which is cool too, which is awesome. But awesome. Well, Erica, thanks for doing that again. You're awesome. And it was a great drive out here today, and we're excited about episode 33. So let's introduce this fellow real quick.
So we had the great Michael Cook here. Okay. Now, so
Michael,
everybody that I'm just going to say this, every winery in the North Texas and even down around Fredericksburg all have said, you have to get Michael Cook on here. You have to get Michael Cook on here. And I'm sitting there like,
how many people have said that? I'm not kidding. Have at least, we've done 33
Can I use
podcasts.
my Toes account too?
But 33 podcasts. I would say, Michael, just to give you kudos for sure.
Yeah.
I would say half of the people
half,
you've
if not
interviewed.
more than half.
That's humbling, and I would say if you can tie me down with ropes because my head is elevated, I'm levitating right now.
I don't know if we can get
Come
about
back,
this winery.
come back
Bring me
down.
back
Well,
down
we
to
are in a Square Cloud winery, so you got to be in the clouds. You know?
Well,
Absolutely, we are in the clouds, and it's not 110, so it feels like an outdoor day today.
That's beautiful. Well, when I was looking you up a little bit, just trying to research a little bit, I read. I'm going to read it real quick because it makes you sound very astute, very educated, very, very academia.
Yeah. This is not helping him come back from the clouds.
Not that you're not all
Well,
those things, Michael.
I am an Aggie, so I have to give
we
you
were not going to hold that
take
against
it with
you.
a grain of salt.
Well, Michael Cook is a North Texas wine grape specialist and a viticulture program specialist for North Texas with Texas AgriLife Extension. And I thought, well, that guy wears a bow tie, and he probably. But no, that's not the case, Will. Instead, he came in with a great attitude, super fun. And I read another article with people talking about you, and you are just really a connector. It sounds like you really enjoy people, and there's no doubt you enjoy what you do. So, Michael, real quick, tell us about yourself. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I'll give you the whole story. I want to first thank y'all for having me on this podcast, and I'm just so thankful for people like you who are sharing the news on Texas wine and sharing the story on these incredible grape growers and winemakers and those out of the tasting room who are interfacing with the public. A lot of people don't know that we even make Texas wine. And so it's great the work y'all are doing, spreading the awareness of Texas wine and how we can make some incredible wine.
yeah.
So my wine story starts back. It's not as romantic as others, but it starts all the way back. As one of my professors at A&M would say, Dr. George Ray McKitchen, in the beginning. I am from a family in Dallas. You can tell by my voice, I'm not from deep South Texas. I'm up from North Texas. But no one in my family really has an ag background. So my parents were in marketing and accounting. And the only real experience that I got in agriculture was thanks to two of my uncles who were cattlemen, cattle ranchers. And so I learned what hard work and sweat equity meant, working cows.
Good lessons.
In high school. Yeah. So, but, the only experience I had early on was, of course, all my aunts drank wine. And,
of course.
We had little gardens here and there. My grandparents, my mom was instrumental in that. But I actually didn't have any interest in wine. I wanted to be a police officer for most of my life.
Wow.
And then working on my uncle's cattle ranch, I said, well, I like law enforcement, but I'm really fascinated with nature and the outdoors. And so I wanted to become a game warden. And I was actually, it's always interesting how our life changes, and sometimes very quickly. I was going to be going to Tarleton, which is a great university, well regarded for parks and wildlife. And then at the last minute, I decided to try out A&M. And I actually am a 2%er. I wasn't there all 4 years, and I only went to one football game. So as far as Aggie standards go, I was pretty much a loser.
Oh, my goodness.
Some of my friends can vouch for that. But
well, we won't talk to them because they don't know how much a great guy you are.
Know. Yeah,
they're not on the podcast.
Only positives today. But anyway, so I studied horticulture at A&M. This was, it doesn't seem that long ago, but now it was almost a decade ago, 2012. I transferred to A&M and studied horticulture, knowing that I love the outdoors. I'm really fascinated in growing things. The great thing about plants is you kill one, they're not going to scream at you like a cow will if you do something to it. So
right.
I was like, okay, not animals. I'm more interested in plants, but law enforcement kind of went to the wayside, although it kept me, being a good boy. So, and out of trouble, I guess you could say. But how my kind of wine journey came to fruition happened at Texas A&M. And I already alluded to the great Dr. George Ray McKitchen, who's still around and promoting Texas grapes and wine. And I took his Viticulture 101 course and his wine appreciation course. And just, y'all know, I mean, when you start learning about wine, it's very exciting because it's not one dimensional. You're not just talking about growing grapes to eat grapes.
Right.
You're not just talking about making wine. The two are connected.
Right.
And, I'm going to give you an exclusive here. I don't tell people this, but this stays just between us.
Okay.
4,000 people.
Don't tell anybody.
I used to hate wine. I would not drink it.
No.
And
So we're going to bleep that out now.
Yeah, you're going to have to edit that out. But, let's just say one of my aunts may have offered me a little taste, and I hated it. So early on, I didn't become interested in wine for the wine itself. It was the history, the culture, the science, the artistic value. I mean, it all comes together. And nothing against our hardworking peach growers or pecan growers, but they're working their butts off. They make a wonderful product, but it's in and of itself as one dimensional. You grow a peach, you sell it, you eat it. Well, you can make peach wine out of it, but grapes. The grapes have their characteristics, the yeast, the winemaking process. It's so complex. Even after doing this for thousands of years, we still, are changing and evolving and trying to make better, more enjoyable products. But also, how many of you have a peach or a pecan and, that brings everyone to the table? I mean, my grandma's peach cobbler was pretty darn good, but wine brings people together in a very special way. So I'll leave it at this. While at A&M, I had some great opportunities to work with both faculty across different universities, being able to tour Fredericksburg. My first Texas wine was Messina Hoff. It was the port, the Papa Paolo port.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
And that converted me. And so, because as many people do on their wine journey, most people don't gravitate immediately to heavy tannin reds. You start easy. So maybe a sweet white, a Moscato, Muscadine, or you're moving towards port. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I'm just going to drizzle this on my ice cream.
So can I ask you a question? Did someone make fun of you drinking Moscato? Because I got somebody that made fun of me.
When you're in college, people don't judge that way. As long as, you're able to stand up. So what they made fun of me. So I'm just loose lips here. I'm going to give you another.
Yourself in
I'm going to give you.
And you're sober, right? No.
I'm a good Catholic boy. Yes. Moderation, right? But no. So people didn't make fun of me for drinking Moscato, although they could have. But what they did make fun of me, so there's a tradition at A&M when you get your senior ring, you're supposed to dunk it in a pitcher of beer and chug it. And I didn't do that.
Uh-oh.
I dropped my ring in a glass of port and chugged it. And
He was destined to be in the wine world.
Oh, yes.
That's right.
Yes.
So some people laughed at that, but I was like, you know what? Too bad. I don't really care. So we had fun.
But the priest probably didn't mind.
Say that
The
again.
priests didn't mind.
Oh, no.
No.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. So, but yeah, what, let me think. What was I going to say?
Talk about Moscatos.
Oh yeah, so it started with sweeter whites and then port styles, and then slowly, especially through travel, going down to Fredericksburg. My enology professor at the time, the late Dr. Greg Cobb, we went on a field trip. Now we all thought it was going to be an enjoyable, relaxing, drink wine on the patio with cheese. No, we were at a place called William Chris, who I know y'all know him.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chris Brundrett and Bill Blackman and their whole crew are one of the leaders in our industry. I don't think anyone would argue with that. And but this was way back when. This was 2013.
Wow.
They were just starting. They were small. They didn't have the gorgeous new tasting room, and they were trying to figure out, how they were going to do this and make some money, because they'll tell you they had a lot of debt. They probably still do, but they're really doing well now. Well, we get there and we have a sip of wine to kind of get, us 30 students kind of interested. And it was a dry. It was the Hunter Blend, which is one of their flagships. But we spent the rest of the day, all 8 hours, putting labels by hand on thousands of bottles. So we certainly worked for that wine, but it was a great experience because we're all working our butts off, but we're in a community. We're all having fun, sipping on wine, just learning about the process. And so at that point, that's when I realized that I want to be in the Texas wine industry.
Wow.
Now, some other things that happened. I was fortunate enough to have met, who's now a good friend of mine, Lydia, now Nida. She was with Grape Creek Vineyards on that same trip to William Chris. We went to a couple other places, and one of those was Grape Creek. And so she had just completed her Master's of Science in Grapes and Wine at Fresno State, which, if you know anything about wine universities, you have UC Davis, which most people instantly recognize as one of the premier wine schools in the United States. And Fresno State doesn't get that same accolade, but it is extremely, it prepares you well for production. And so the joke is UC Davis trains scientists and Fresno State trains growers and winemakers. It's very applied and practical. And now they have some even now top-notch researchers. And so anyways, so I said, she said, is anyone interested? My advisor's looking for another student. It may be fully covered through a fellowship. And I said, I don't really know what I want to do. I don't have a lot of money to start my own winery or vineyard. And frankly, I don't think I'm fully prepared. And this is such a great opportunity. And so I had 2 weeks after graduating. I met the advisor over the phone. I never met him before. And I was saying howdy and y'all. And I don't know if he was too sure about me. But he said, you've got 2 weeks to take the GRE and get your butt up to Fresno, California, which I had never been to before, never been to California. I've only heard horror stories, right? Being a native Texan. Right. And so here's little old me, never grown a grapevine in my life. I've got some interesting, understanding of the rich history and culture of wine, a little bit of science from my classes. But here I am. I land in Fresno. I bombed the GRE, by the way. It was so stressful. But my advisor goes, it's just a formality. And I ended up getting a full fellowship. So it was completely paid for through other reasons. But anyway, so I was there, and guess who I worked for? I didn't even know who they were at the time, but it was Bronco Wine Company. That's the chair. My advisor's chair was endowed by Bronco Wine Company. You may know Fred Franzia. And so they are one of our largest wineries and vineyard holders in California. And they are the makers of many different labels of wine, mainly bulk, but Charles Shaw. So $2 Chuck at Trader Joe's.
Yes.
We were, as you could imagine, working to improve color and quality in the fruit there in the desert of the San Joaquin Valley, which is very similar to Texas as far as it's hot as heck. It is drier. So, I'm not having to sweat my brow as much from the humidity, but I was there for 2 years, and that's where I fell in love all over again with the wine industry and getting that different perspective. But here's little old me. Well, y'all can see me. I'm not so little, but here is me, who is just this big, like a thumbtack, in a sea of brilliant, grape growers and winemakers and industry academics. And my advisor goes, this is going to be your research vineyard. And guess how big it was? And that's all I could see until we got to the Sierra, 4,000 acres.
Wow.
So
and I said, oh, go ahead.
He wanted you to do all that by yourself?
Well, so we were going to, in the 4,000 acre vineyard, that was one vineyard in north of Fresno. I was going to be working on an 80 acre block of Merlot, and I was going to manage with a crew, of course, but my master's work revolved around irrigation and some other canopy management practices, but I had to make sure that they were irrigating these rows appropriately every week. And we had data to collect. And you can imagine, even within that 4,000 acre block, 80 acres driving a mule through, trying to collect data on over, 100 data vines was a lot of work. But I thought to myself, what did I get myself into? 4,000 acres at the time, that was our entire acreage for the state of Texas. And that really hit home to me.
That's amazing.
So,
that's an incredible statistic.
Oh, yeah.
So interject here. So what kind of data were you collecting? So, I mean, you got 4,000 acres. Obviously, you're going through different blocks. So what kind of data, just so our listeners understand this, what kind of data were you collecting?
Yeah, that's a great question. Fortunately, it was a 4,000 acre block. This is bulk wine, so they're growing a lot of just a few varieties. Merlot was what we were looking at, because Merlot, especially in a hot climate, tends to struggle with decent tannin composition and especially color. And the challenge there is water is a finite and precious resource, right? And not only in Texas, but especially in California. Right. Not all parts of California, but many, especially in the San Joaquin Valley, which, if you're not aware, it's where all our fruits and vegetables come from, pretty much, except for a few exceptions. But that's the arid strip that goes down the center of California. And it's dry, it's fairly sandy, there's some weeds, but not a lot of trees. And you're in between the mountains and then the other hills or mountains that gets you to Central California and the coast. So agriculturally and horticulturally, it's heaven on earth, because they're growing. All you see when I drove, this was another little story, being a Texan. So I had to check my guns in, right? I had to register those. So that was a new experience for me, but also I didn't come to California in a nice little, Toyota Corolla. I had a V10 Ford Excursion, and I was barreling through the Tehachapi Mountains.
Staring at you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And I had Texas plates at the time, so they were probably reporting me to, the EPA or whoever. And so it passed smog, though. I couldn't believe it, but I was barreling through the Tehachapi Mountains, and what do I see? You can see the whole valley floor for hundreds of miles. And right when you pass, it's all green blocks, and that's where all of our, not all, but a lot of our citrus comes from, almost all of our almonds. You see table grapes, wine grapes, walnuts, peaches, nectarines, plums, all sorts of stuff. And so, it was obviously challenging anytime that we're, trying to build upon our skill set. It can be challenging, but it was absolutely one of the best experiences I've ever had. And so just being in that environment.
Right.
But to your question, I didn't answer it. The data we were collecting had to do with, there was an enology component, but it was primarily viticulture based. And so we're looking at how that grapevine grows with less water, and also trying to keep that canopy open. We have the same challenges here in Texas. Now, the solution may be tweaked a little bit, and that's where my PhD comes into play with irrigation and cover cropping, but I digress. So we're looking at these grapes. So we're measuring how much sunlight is penetrating into the canopy. We're of course looking at the basic things like how much fruit are we hanging on? Is the vine in balance? Pruning weights. We're actually doing something that we wouldn't do on a small vineyard setting, but we're literally stripping the vine next to our data vine completely of leaves. And we're literally scanning every single leaf to get what we call the leaf area index. That was one of the worst things we ever had to do. It was 400 bags full of leaves you have to scan while they're still fresh.
Wow.
So that was a lot. But we're looking at that, and that was the main thing. And so just trying to figure out, hey, when you go to California, if you're in Napa, you're getting paid not by the ton, but the enticement is quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're a bulk winery, you're concerned about quality. Of course, you want a baseline quality, but you're more interested in tonnage.
Right.
And so in Napa, they may be crop thinning to a ton or 2 tons or 3 tons an acre. In the Valley, they're not selling wines for $100 a bottle. They're selling $2 Chuck for $3. Now it's $4 Chuck. But anyways,
inflation.
But they're trying to push as much out of those vines as they can. And we're talking of Zinfandel. They were harvesting 17 tons an acre of Zinfandel.
Wait a minute, you said 17 tons an acre?
An acre, yeah. So, and that number's even gone up in some cases for some varieties. I mean, these growers are, of course, again, quality is still important, but it's not the end all be all. They're getting paid per ton. And so one of the challenges that our brothers and sisters in California in the bulk wine arena were worried about is, how do we water our vines appropriately?
Sure.
And is more water better? Because more water could plump up the berries a little bit more, which would increase your yield. But does that have a negative effect on color and tannin structure and even bricks, ripening, these ripening indices? And what we found out was, because water is the new gold or the new oil rather, in California and Texas, we were able to show that you could go from 30, just picture this, 30 acre inches. So 30 inches of water is what they irrigated per acre on these vines in a desert. And we were able to go from 30 acre inches to 9 acre inches with no negative impact on crop, and our quality actually improved. And so there was huge major money savings. Now, I won't bore you with all the details, but pulling leaves was what we were doing to keep that canopy open mechanically. I mean, this vineyard had, I think, over 200 Massey Ferguson tractors on standby. They had maybe it was 40 tractors, but they had 250 hired hands to do all the major pruning and harvesting. Not harvesting. They had machines for that, but the pruning and manipulation of other things. So anywho, but that costs money, even if it's mechanized. And so we were able to, through the cost savings of water, be able to implement that leaf removal to help reduce disease. Now, they don't have as much disease as we do, but they still have it, and be able to get better color through that light dappled infiltration of sunlight into the canopy on that fruit. Because they're not using VSP, it's called the California sprawl. They still use it, where the vines grow to a head and they just flop over. And so it can be really easy to get into this shaded conditioned canopy where you stick your hand and you can't even see your fingers, because that vine's in a beautiful climate. I mean, it gets cool at night. It may be hot in the day, lots of vegetative growth. And so those two together seem to work really well. So we were excited. And of course, those practices, you always wonder as a researcher, A, does anyone care? And B, is anyone going to adopt these practices? And they were with Bronco Wine Company. So we were excited about that. But that was 2 years in California working directly. And it was through there that I found my love for teaching. Because whenever you're looking at, hey, do I want to go into the industry and actually grow grapes or make wine or whatever it is, or sell out of the tasting room or do the business side of things, I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. I knew I was interested in the industry. That the Texas wine industry was very supportive of me. And welcoming, which was really nice. There were a lot of mentors throughout my time at A&M and in California. But I realized then I wanted to teach. And the best thing about what I do now in extension, which most people don't know what extension is.
I was going to ask that. That's on my notes. What is extension?
Yeah. So extension. So it's essentially a research-based. Okay. It's a research-based consultant. And so I work for the university through Texas A&M. And since A&M is the land-grant university, we house what's called the Extension Service. And so the Extension Service, there's one in pretty much every state, and they take the research that's done at the university level, either through Extension or through other faculty, and extend that information and translate it from, very complicated scientific terms to practical terms for the people actually making our industry. They're the wheels, and we're trying to add a little oil to it. So, we take that information and share it with growers and winemakers and help them in their challenges find solutions and do it research-based. I mean, what I do is I'm not paid by any company. I'm paid through the state, actually, thanks to the Texas Wine and Grape Growers Association through a Senate bill. And my job is to provide research-based information to our grape growers. Now, there's not a lot of us. We're very fortunate to have as many as we do, but I'm not a county agent like some other of my colleagues are in Extension who work with cattle or wheat or corn or whatever. And so I have a 55 county territory. So you can see me, I've gained a lot of weight, and that's because I'm on the road all the time, and all there is McDonald's and whatever out there. So that's my excuse.
So basically you're on the road all the time. Does it work in Erica?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Cool. Well, that's an excellent explanation. I had it written down here for sure because it sounds like kind of a complicated thing that you do. But I was noticing that one of my notes here says, how do you get paid? So that's all a state legislative grant, or how does that work?
It was a blessing for everyone. If you ask me, it was through Senate Bill 881. And this Senate bill was championed by the Texas Wine and Grape Growers Association. And it allocated wine excise tax dollars. To my knowledge, it was wine excise tax from imports. And so the tax dollars are not from the public themselves. It's from those bottles of wine coming in from California. It's a very small percentage, but that has funded all of our positions, and not just at Texas A&M. Again, we are the land-grant university, so we have the added responsibility of extension and outreach, which we're very proud of. But it also, the funds to go to Texas Tech, and then we're not very far from it. Y'all probably heard of Grayson College. Their viticulture and enology program at the community college there with Andy Allen, who's now the director, and we love Andy.
Andy's an amazing guy. Let me just say
Wonderful. Yeah. So we're very excited of the things to come from that program. And so that funding goes through education, and it's all about reinvesting into the industry. And we've got a lot of great grape growers and winemakers out there that are pioneering, that are trialing and erroring, and we're here to support everyone. But, we can learn from them. Hopefully they can learn from us, and we can all work together to make everything more profitable, make Texas wine even greater and better year after year, and get the word out that we can make something truly unique. We can make things that are representative of other areas, but we have our own name. And fortunately, although a lot of Texans don't know that we actually make Texas wine. And I'll give you the stat on that because I am research-based. So our state enologist, Dr. Bodazatu, put together a poll. And I think there were over 1,000 respondents. And I believe the number was 50% of these were public. This was not industry people. Over 50% didn't even know we made Texas wine.
Wow.
And I would have to agree with that because I have talked to a lot of people and they ask me about my background, and I tell them I'm in the wine industry and stuff like that. And they're like, "Oh, you go to California?" I was like, "No, I'm doing it here in Texas." And they're like, "Texas has wine?" And I was like, "Well, do you not see the wineries when you drive around?"
And that's not old data. That was done 1 or 2 years. I think not last year, but the year before. So we're encouraged because that means that not a lot of people know, even though we're working tirelessly. Everyone, y'all, the industry, we're promoting, and there's a lot of excitement about Texas wine. We're growing rapidly. But, I don't look at that as necessarily a bad thing because I see people don't know. And so we need to stop. We need to not stop talking about it.
That's what we're doing, right?
We can make a huge impact on sharing. And, the great thing is in California, they're not as prideful as us. Well, they don't love California as much as we love Texas.
True.
That's right. Well, one thing that we have here in Texas going for us and I'm not bashing all the other states. Let me make that very clear. I know I make fun of California all the time.
We
No,
have
no.
to because they're the
We
big
have to.
boys.
It's-
They're the big boys in the room.
California and Texas are always at fight with each other, whether
Oh, yeah.
it's guns or agriculture. It's
Yeah.
always something, you know.
Absolutely.
But we have something here in Texas going for us that most states do not. We have so many people who promote Texas wines and Texas
Absolutely.
grapes. I mean, for example, Jeff and Amy with the Texas Wine Lover, you know, they even gave pamphlets out to people and say, hey, when you go to a restaurant or go to a wine bar or something like that, and they don't offer Texas wine, leave them a card. Say, hey, why can't you? Well, I don't remember what the card actually says, but it says, can you or will you offer Texas wines?
Absolutely.
You know, and we need those distributors that can be able to get with these wineries and put out. Now, I understand that the small wineries can't do it as much as the big Messina Hoffs, the Grape Creek, the Landons, the William Chris, Messina Hoffs, stuff like that, because I mean, it takes money to make money.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, but here in Texas, we've got so many avenues that tell people about Texas wines, Texas grapes. You know, I don't know about Michael, but I mean, I'm running across people all the time
Right.
that don't know about it. And then I tell them about, you know, what I do and all that. And they look at me like I've lost my head.
Yeah.
And then I explain to them, go down here to, you know, even if you just go down to Grapevine and go to try Landon. I mean, what Bob and Jason's doing over there is amazing. What the Binghams are doing is freaking amazing, you know?
It's so interesting because there's so many stories out there, and y'all are the ones who would know even more than I do. I mean, I'm fortunate in Extension that I'm on the road. I get to see people constantly, over 120 growers at minimum is who I work with. But y'all are out there across the whole state, and not just with grape growers and winemakers. You know, you're talking to other consultants and other industry members, and maybe those that in your daily lives. You know, the guy at HEB selling Texas wine, or the guy at the liquor store, and so. It's interesting because everyone has a different story, and we all can unite together and share this commonality. And you're right, Texans are very proud of locally made produce. The TDA Go program's one. We're working with Uncorked Texas Wine with TDA. You mentioned, you know, trying to get restaurants and other wine stores to start carrying Texas wine. It can be a big challenge, especially because as with any local produce, not just in Texas, but typically the price point is going to be a little higher than what they can get in bulk wholesale from somewhere else. And so there can be some hesitation and simply handing them a card, you know, at the restaurant saying, we'd love for you to serve Texas wine. Here's a website where you can get more information, or here's who you can contact if you don't know really where to begin. And so we're working with TDA, who used to have things like that, and they're wanting to really kind of rebrand and get educational information out. And of course, through Extension, we do that too. Also, not just with research for our grape growers and winemakers, but we teach master gardeners and the public. And I even though my primary responsibility is in viticulture, I do a lot of public outreach for just Texas wine, sharing our history, which our history, mind you, is even more interesting, in my opinion, than that of California. And so,
it's so much richer.
It goes way back.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we can't, there's some things that California's got that we don't, and that's okay. But we were growing grapes 100 years before California was. That's
Mission
just
grapes.
one thing. Yeah. With the Franciscans. So
here's something that me and Jen actually had a conversation about the other day. And I think it was Neil. We were having this conversation about finding the original mission grapes that were originally grown in Texas 100 years ago.
Right.
Do you know of any of those vines still around in Texas?
So there's some interesting things there. You know, every few years there's a new paper out about the origin of viticulture in the world. There was just a paper out on where, you know, a lot of these vinifera varieties originated, and we're kind of interested too in our own heritage in the United States. And so we're always looking. I don't know if any mission varieties or any of the others have survived that are actually visible. However, there are examples of grapevines that have been around a long time. One of those is in our backyard right up here. There was an old A&M research station in Montague County and was planted, I believe, in the 40s. They were doing a lot of research on grapes, including table grapes, because we hadn't explored that. And there's the old vineyard, the old research station is long gone. There's not any trace of it except one thing. What do you think that is?
The grapevines.
Some of the grapevines have survived. Also, I guess it's 2 hours to the east at the historic Fort Belknap. I've been fortunate to be working with them. They have, y'all got to go check it out. I bet you my prediction is these grapevines there are maybe not, they're not the oldest in the United States, but they are the largest. These were wild Mustang grapes that were planted in 1930s on the grounds of Fort Belknap to offer shade and a place for community. They still have family reunions, and the school kids come out and eat under the arbor. And these grapes, now my colleague, Dr. Shiner, always jokes because I have a photo of me next to these grapevines. And he goes, why did you stand that way in that photo? And I said, I really don't know. He goes, I do. It's because the circumference of your gut is the same circumference of that tree, that grapevine. I say tree because it looks like a tree. Those trunks are over 6 to 7 feet in circumference.
Wait a minute.
They're insane.
These are grapevines.
This is Vitis mustangensis, one of our native grapevines to Texas.
We need to go see that.
Okay, well, so just so happens, I actually have, not anymore, but I have ties in Newcastle, which is right there.
Yeah, it's right near
I had
Graham,
a lot
Young County.
I had a lot of great grandmother that grew up there. Lived there.
That community at Fort Belknap and the commissioners, I give them all the credit because they saw a need for the dilapidation of this. These grapes received no care. No one watered them. No one fertilized them. They grew. They still produce, but they said, we want to make sure these last a long time, even, superseding our lifetime. And so I came in and I think I gave the judge a heart attack because the day he showed up, we were cutting the main branches off the grapevine because I call them branches because they were 8 inches in diameter.
Holy cow.
And we almost had to, we call an ambulance. And I said, I promise I'm giving you the Aggie guarantee. It may not be worth much, but these vines are going to be better than what they were because we were removing, I'm an Aggie. So what's the math? 1930s,
almost 200 years, almost 85 years, not
whatever that is, of just growth upon growth, and no one ever pruned them. No one did anything. And so we removed all that diseased dead wood. They literally look like a mushroom head, and they have grown out and filled back in the new arbor beautifully, and they're producing fruit again. Wow. And that's going to extend their life, hopefully another 100 years. Right. And so, but you look at that and you go, oh my gosh, I mean, who would have known? And not too far from Dallas, Fort Worth, there's that. But to go back to some of the more historic vines, that one of the sentinel vines that has been in the history books was the convent grape. So we hear of Mission quite a bit, especially in California. They still have some of the older plantings there down near Temecula. And so in the 1800s, some of those vines are that old, and you can get their Mission wine, which it's like a port, tastes like raisins, essentially. It's very concentrated, aromatic, intense. It's beautiful. We still see some of that out at Valverde, which y'all know is our longest standing winery. Some of the older vines they have there. And then the convent vine, there was one of them that was at a convent. So some sisters from France, I believe, that was one of the successful grapes back in that time. And they had one vine left, and it was at the old cathedral, but they moved it. And I don't know. I've been trying to figure out if it has survived at all. Okay. So long story, as all my answers are, but we don't know of any missions that are still around, although we can still get mission cuttings from Foundation Plant Services at Davis, which come from at least the California missions, at least to some degree, right, of certainty.
So there's a good chance, more likely, than those ones in California could have came from Texas then?
Most certainly, because the order that was spreading Christianity and following the Spanish government were the Franciscans. And so it wasn't like it was the Dominicans went up to California and the Franciscans went to Texas and they never spoke. Mm-hmm. This was the same order. And so it was just, following that history, but the same people and the same group. And so surely the grapes they were planting in California, most likely they may not have been genetically identical, but very similar to what they planted in Texas. Okay. And so, of course, we planted them first here, and then 100 years later. Of course.
Yeah, we got to definitely make sure we say that we planted it here first.
We can't say much about how great, we are compared to California, but I'm sticking with, we had the first vines, right? Thanks to those Franciscans. And then, as y'all know, I mean, the Germans, the French, the Italians, I always like to say, the poor French and the Italians did okay, but the poor French, they gave up almost instantly. Those stubborn Germans, though, no one made no one made wine from the grapes they brought in, right? Those European varieties, due to Pierce's disease and the fungal pressure and cold, surely drought. But the Germans didn't give up. They said, well, if we can't make Riesling or whatever, Gewürztraminer, at least we'll try to pick some of those Mustang grapes that are wild and make wine. But I found this interesting. You couldn't get your grapes to grow. You're going to harvest Mustang grapes. If you've ever had a Mustang grape, or one of our natives, not Muscadine, I'm talking Mustang, which you'll see in Dallas, Fort Worth, everywhere down to Austin. You eat one of those, it looks ripe, and then you smile, and your teeth get real sensitive because the enamel's been stripped off. They're super acidic.
Yeah, they're super acidic.
And so, but in order to make wine from that, they had to add sugar, which at the time was one of the rarest commodities in that area. You had to have it imported, and you had to make it last. And so they tried, and they made a few barrels, I believe, of Mustang wine, and they probably didn't like it, but it was something. So our history has been wrought with strife and challenge and failure. But we haven't stopped. And so even from the very beginning, Texans have built upon this resiliency. And a lot of our grape growers and winemakers come from either successful careers where they've had to struggle and fail, as doctors or lawyers or those successful businessmen and women, or they were in agriculture. And they've grown up with depression of losing your entire crop, and struggling. So I think that's one of the other things that sets us apart is we're resilient. Yep. And, things can go wrong this year or next year, but we're always trying to better ourselves, research, learn, experiment. And so, we're here at Square Cloud, and y'all will interview Jackson, I believe, later. And he's one of those. His mantra is experimentation. And so it's really exciting.
Yeah. But so I have a question for you. So you talked about, you're learning the viticulture stuff, and you've learned how, all the science behind the grape growing, but have you actually made any of your own wine?
So yes, I have. And I
the look on your face and the confusion you're saying this.
I'm trying to see if I'm going to get put in jail for saying this, because the secrets I'm sharing are racking up here, which I'm happy to. There's no real secrets. But yes, I have made wine. And before I actually made wine from grapes, I made mead. So honey wine, which is one of the most ancient alcoholic beverages. And I may or may not have made that when I was legally allowed to.
Well, the statute of limitations already passed, so you're good.
Okay, yeah, because I'm well over 30, so that's good. So mead was what I kind of dabbled in first, and then going to Fredericksburg, you've got grapes there, but what else are they known for? Peaches. Yep. So I was like, I want to make some Fredericksburg peach wine, and I did, and that was wonderful. I screwed up the mead big time because I didn't just make a gallon or two. I tried to make 6 gallons with like $100 worth of honey. I made it. It was doing fabulous. And I put an airlock on the carboy, and I set it in a corner, and I'd never checked it for about 3 weeks. And guess what happened? The dog must have knocked off the airlock. And for 3 weeks there was oxygen. And that was bad. So that was a financial, an emotional learning point in my life. But from then, I didn't make wine from grapes except in my enology class at A&M, but that was kit at the time. It wasn't fresh fruit. That didn't happen until California. So Fresno State, again, they're oriented in production, teaching and growing up the next grape growers and winemakers. And they have a 120-acre teaching vineyard in the backyard.
Wow.
So you can't harvest all that stuff. And it's not just wine grapes. Of course, they do a lot of table grapes and raisins. But there's always many, many different vines that had tons of fruit left over. So my graduate student cohort and I, we made tons of wine from all different things: Barbera, Zinfandel, Pinot Noir, all those things. So that was good. My wheelhouse is viticulture. So, I'm not going to be winning major awards, but that's the thing that's so great about this industry is there's a place for everyone, and you can always learn something. And, you may not like wine, you may love wine, you may not like to make wine, vice versa. There's so many avenues you can kind of splinter into for whatever you want to learn about and enjoy. But enology is very exciting. But I grow grapes. I'm a horticulturist at heart. So, if it's going to be challenging, I want to try it. So personally, I grow a couple hundred different grapevine varieties on my property. I grow about 80 different blackberry varieties, 90 different raspberry varieties, another 250 or so fruit trees of all kinds, and then a bunch of tropicals, thanks to one of my best friends, Dr. Tim Hartman at A&M, who is one who has a affinity for tropical plants. So he was my TA at A&M, and I got hooked on that. So mangoes, avocados, vanilla, lychee, you can't do it outdoors. It's got to be protected in the winter at least. And so my kind of interests fracture and splinter all over the place, but my true love is viticulture, and trying to make the best grapes. Well, trying not to, break the bank, or I'm not married, but, a lot of our grape growers, we don't want to dissolve marriage, through the knocks of hard, whatever that saying is.
But I think all the wine that they'll make out of it will keep them together,
Yeah. All the wine
That's right. Well, and wine itself, they always say it takes a lot of beer to make wine. And I say it still takes a lot of wine to make wine too.
Oh, yes. Because you're always testing and trying. This is not good.
Yeah. And just to kind of, you have that glass of wine on the patio, it's only 95 degrees, right? Instead of 110. And you're going, this is it. And you're just enjoying it. And
that was last night.
Yeah, it was. That was last night.
I know. Sure. Let's not talk about the 110. It depresses me.
Right.
Like the next 10 day, it's already September, and we're still 110.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a question on my mind here, getting to know you and so excited to finally meet you. But one of the things that we have had a lot of our stats about how many wineries and how many tasting rooms are in the state of Texas. Now, if there's one authority who I think has a good handle on it, I think it would be you. And so I printed this article from a couple years ago. I apologize, but I'm going to quote you. It says, the wine industry in Texas has grown exceptionally since our humble beginnings. We are currently a $2.7 billion industry and employing 12,758 employees full-time, Texans full-time. How many wineries are now established in Texas? What is the growth curve looking like right now?
That's a great
And what
question.
is the trajectory?
And that's one of the things that there's a lot of different stories floating around out there, and we don't have a concise, guaranteed number. However, there are a number of research-based methods we've employed to try to figure that out. And so one of those has been, for years, the USDA NASS survey has tried to get a grasp on how many vineyard acres we have. We believe that they've done a great job, but some of those numbers may have been underreported. So we've never really gotten a solid answer on that until recently. As far as number of wineries goes, there's a couple metrics. I mean, obviously, you could have a bean counter trying to find every single one in the state, but y'all know Texas is big. I'll never forget the first drive back from Fresno for summer break in my master's. Going from El Paso, and I felt so good. I go, praise the Lord, hallelujah. I'm in Texas, I'm home. And I looked at my GPS and I was only halfway because I had another 11 hours to Dallas. And so it's big. And things change, right? But we can look at a number of indices to gauge growth. And so vineyard acreage certainly is one. We have done surveys for a number of wineries through A&M. So last year we had the Texas A&M Crush Report. California has a Crush Report. They have very accurate numbers because they are forced to report. We're in the great state of Texas. People don't like doing things the government tells them to do unless they have to, right?
Exactly.
So, they go, what's it their business? But I'm going to tell you right now, working with grape growers and winemakers across the state, guys, it is critical that the government has a general understanding of how many acres of grapes we have, how much wine we produce, which that number we can get pretty easily because that's heavily recorded, right, through alcohol production. Sure. But what's the gauge of our growth? Because if we can share that we are growing, we're an agricultural commodity, that means more money, more state money, more federal dollars for research, for marketing. And we don't have a lot of that right now. We're blessed with what we do have, but we could use a lot more to be able to find solutions for our industry. And so, vineyard acreage, one of the great things about Extension is we're across the entire state and we're in vineyards day in and day out. So we now have a pretty good handle on that. The Texas Crush Report stated through A&M, we were actually requested through a Senate bill, thanks to the Hill Country group there, the wine growers there with Chris Brundrett, was able to get that. And so we were tasked by the state legislature to do a crush report. We did. We have about 9,000 acres of grapes, give or take, across the entire state for commercial use. Okay, that's good. Most numbers had us around 6,000. Of course, About 70% of that nowadays comes from the High Plains. So they're still the primary production area. But we grow grapes across the entire state.
Yep.
All the way down. Y'all may not know this, but down in the valley where our grapefruits come from, they grow grapes there. They're in primary fermentation in June.
Wow.
Right? So we have huge discrepancies. Not a bad thing, but total huge differences in what we grow, where we grow it, how we grow it, when it's ripe, when we make wine. So down there, but then we've also got vineyards in Dalhart and Orange and Texarkana. And so we've got it everywhere. Now, as far as number of wineries, okay, you go, what is a winery? That's the question everyone asks. What is a winery? Is a winery just a permit, having what was known as the G permit? Or is that how many locations you have? Or is that where the main winery production facility is? So it's very hard to gauge. Now, we estimated, this just gives you an indication of growth. Back in 2013, so when I was doing my undergraduate work at A&M, just getting my feet wet, which I haven't been around in the industry a lot for very long. But just then, 2013, we had about 340 wineries, actual wineries. Today, we have over 800. Okay, but there is a statistic out there you can look up, and it's through an incredible group. They have a lot of awesome statistics worldwide for the wine industry, and it's called the American Association of Wine Economists. And they publish incredible graphics and statistics from all over the world. And one of the statistics they just put out, they put it out twice from what I can see, is how many permits through TTB there are. And it used to be we were number 5 in the United States, Texas. Of course, who's number 1? California. We had Washington State, Oregon, and New York. And that order for them may have been a little off. But now we have surpassed New York and Oregon.
Wow.
We're now number 3. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yes, now we are. I'm thinking of the 2 in my head. So we are now number 3. So we've got Washington State and California ahead of us. Now, that is permits. So, of course, some wineries have numerous permits, but that's over a 900 now. And so, but the statistic is going, there'll be a little difference there. But if you look at it, everyone's on the same playing field because that's permits across all states. It's not like we're saying California, we know has these wineries, but permits for here. So we're all on a level playing field just to show our growth. So I predict we're probably at actual wineries, we're probably, in the 500-600s, I would think. Okay. But as far as permits, we're well over 900. Wow. That information is available for free, and it's increasing rapidly every year. So there's no doubt. I mean, long gone are the days, and y'all are a testament to that. We're here in Gunter, Texas. Right. And we're not even in Denison, which is kind of the, mecca of our wine industry in North Texas. We're in Gunter. Long gone are the days where you couldn't find a local winery near you. And I would say long gone are the days where you couldn't find an exceptional winery making incredible wines near you.
That's my takeaway so far. That is so awesome to hear. I'm so excited for Texas.
Yeah, it's just amazing. When I first started doing this wine journey, the blow up of the wine economy actually started about COVID time. Yeah. When everybody had to be trapped in and had to drink.
Yeah. You saw an initial dip when people realized I can't get wine. How do I get it? And then wineries adapted. They were very intuitive and innovative. And hey, we've got a unique product that gets to people in a unique way. Most of our wine sales for Texas are direct to consumer. You go to, the winery itself and you get that whole experience. You go to a fair or a festival. And we started seeing wineries adapt. They'd send mail wine and they do a virtual tasting, and wine clubs and that kind of stuff still persisted. So our industry is growing. And you mentioned monetary too. I like to say, we're not cattle or cotton, right? We can't compete with them. They're, the High Plains growers, those poor growers are 6,000 acres in a 4 million acre cotton patch, right? That is big agriculture. Yep. We're not going to be big agriculture in that sense. But financially, economically, we're a horticultural crop. We're a high value crop. Yes. We're not peanuts. We're not cotton or corn. So on a per acre basis, it's a high value crop. It's also grapes. Out of all the horticultural crops, are the most intense to manage, even more so than pecans and peaches because of the amount of work on a per plant basis. Right. But economically, y'all probably saw the new Wine America survey that was done. The previous one was 2017, 2018. We were $13 billion contribution to the wine industry in the state there, our industry. And now we're 20 billion. So in less than 4 years, what is that? 18? Yeah. We've pretty much increased almost by 10 billion. And that's not just wine sales, of course. That's, vineyard acres, that's wine sales, that's tourism, the main tourism aspect, and jobs employed, taxes paid. Yep. So the wine industry, we're not peanuts anymore. And we need to be on our government elected officials' radar, because we are a true agriculture industry. One could say in moderation, we help with mental health and community. And so it's just something that brings people together. Yep. Now, we still are a beer state, right? If you look at actual beer, liquor, wine, that's something that won't change overnight. I don't think anyone's advocating to change, but we have options. And even in the winery setting, wineries are diversifying. And in one way they're doing that because of course, everyone is welcome into a winery, and you see all kinds of people in wineries, but a lot of times you'll see ladies, and they go and they're there with their friends and they're having a nice time drinking wine. And where's their dang husbands, right? Oh, there's not beer. I said the
exact same thing.
They go, where's the beer? Oh, you don't have beer here? Okay, well, I'll go sit outside. Right. Well, wineries are, again, just that innovative creativity. Making wine styles that are a little more like beer, right? Or something more easy.
Ciders now.
Ciders are huge. And so we're actually doing research. We're the first ones to be doing cider trials as a way to diversify, because you can make cider under the same permit. And so we're seeing a number even of North Texas wineries going, I want to offer something, a drier, a sparkling, for not all men, all right? There's tons of men that love wine, but for those, rough and tough cowboy men, drinkers, who drink ranch water and beer and whiskey, and so seeing that, trying to include everyone in the industry and have an offering for anyone, no matter what your taste, because y'all know there's a lot of wine snobs in the world, but all it really matters is, what do you like? Do you like a sweet wine? If you like Moscato and that's it, I don't care. Good for you. You got something you enjoy. You like the Sagrantino, an ultra high tannin. That's fine. So trying to find something for everyone and share that. But the coolest thing is the story, right? And so that's what your bread and butter is, learning about the story of all these great people who are working their rear ends off.
And we've met great ones, everyone from the farming community to the ownership to employees even. It's just been an absolute pleasure. Well, listen, we're going to wrap up step one, or phase one of this podcast.
Episode 1, because we knew it was going to be a part 2 in here.
But also,
we already knew this. So.
We knew that you were going to be a vast vessel of knowledge. And I kind of was thinking as you were wrapping it up there that, about every 25 episodes, we should have this man back on just so we could pick his brain some more and learn more about it.
And I say, let's order pizza and have it delivered by midnight, because we'll be here a while. Did you bring your sleeping bags?
No, we could.
Well, we have a little appointment with KK after we're done here.
Oh, fabulous.
So I think she sent you that invite too.
Yeah.
So I think I can speak on behalf of Erica and Will, and that is that, there's a great name out there, Munson, which everyone recognizes, but maybe in the next 20, 30 years, the name Cook will be there as well, right? With
Absolutely.
that name.
I wouldn't go that far, but I'm humble.
I'm feeling pretty good about it. Well, listen, folks, we're going to wrap up part 1 of this. I hope you enjoyed it. Just a vast amount of knowledge and education there. It was fantastic. But hey, this is awesome. We'll cut it off here, and we'll be back in a minute.
Hey, We Know Texas Vino listeners. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Michael Cook. Whew, this man is full of knowledge. What's even better is we have a second part with him. And in this second part, we're going to be talking about the growing of the grapevine, from the soil to planting to building the trellis, so forth. So, grab your loved one, grab a bottle of wine, and enjoy it. Now, I know we can't leave you without a quote of the week. You always want to find your number 1 in life. The number 1 bottle of wine, the number 2 bottle of wine, or was it number 3? And then, we are all mortal until the first kiss and the second glass of wine. Cheers.